A flame tank is a type of tank equipped with a flamethrower, most commonly used to supplement combined arms attacks against fortifications, confined spaces, or other obstacles. The type only reached significant use in the Second World War, during which the United States, Soviet Union, Germany, Italy, Japan and the United Kingdom all produced flamethrower-equipped tanks. A number of production methods were used. The flamethrowers used were either modified versions of existing infantry flame weapons especially designed. They were mounted externally, replaced existing machine gun mounts, or replaced the tank's main armament. Fuel for the flame weapon was either carried inside the tank, in armored external storage, or in some cases in a special trailer behind the tank. Flame tanks are generally considered obsolete. No new models have been built since 1962, and its last use in any army was in 1974. Today, thermobaric weapons are considered to be the spiritual successor to flame tanks. Combat effectiveness. In comparison to man-portable flamethrowers, flame tanks carried much more fuel, and could fire a longer range bursts. Due to their ability to get in range of enemy positions in comparative safety, they were invaluable for rooting out heavy infantry fortifications. For example, as no U.S. tank cannon could possibly penetrate the thick bunkers created by the Japanese defenders on islands such as Tarawa or Iwo Jima, flame-throwing tanks were used instead, while infantrymen provided the necessary security during the deployment. The maximum range of a flamethrower was typically less than 150 meters. Because of this limitation, the flamethrower was virtually useless on an open battlefield. However, they proved a potent psychological weapon against fortified troops. In many instances, troops surrendered or fled upon seeing a flame tank fire ranging shots, rather than risk being burned alive. Experience of combat use of flamethrower tanks was mixed. German flamethrower variants of Panzer II and Panzer III were both discontinued due to unsatisfactory performance and converted into assault guns or tank destroyers. The Panzer IV was never converted into a flame variant, despite being used for just about every purpose imaginable on the battlefield. The mixed results were in part due to the development of infantry anti-tank weapons. At the start of the Second World War, most infantry units had weapons with some effectiveness against armored targets at ranges of 30 to 50 meters, like anti-tank rifles. Towards the end of the war, more powerful anti-tank weapons such as the bazooka, Panzerschreck, and PI-80 were introduced, which were fatal to tanks at ranges longer than the tank's flamethrower could reach. While the British used a squadron of Churchill crocodiles during the fighting at Brest in September 1944, the U.S. Army received a smaller American-designed flamethrower mounted upon the M4 Sherman tank during the same month. Assigned to the U.S. Army's 70th Tank Battalion, the flame-throwing tanks went into action on the 18th of September 1944, where it was found that the weapons had a very short range as compared to the British crocodiles, and consequently were not very popular amongst U.S. troops. The Canadian and Dutch armies became two of the most active users of the Wasp flamethrowers while fighting in Europe, finding the weapons to be extremely effective in prying German soldiers from the defenses. Indeed, the mechanical flamethrowers, although not impressive by themselves, struck horror into the minds of German troops, who feared them more than any other conventional weapon. Canadian troops used them during the Battle of the Scheldt. Crews of flame tanks were not necessarily more vulnerable than those crews in the regular, standard version of the tank, but the crews of flame-throwing tanks were often treated differently should they be captured alive by enemy troops, due to the perceived inhumanity of the weapon itself. Captured crews of such tanks were often treated much less humanely than crews of regular tanks. Instances of flame tankers being executed by the opposite troops upon capture were not uncommon. Subsequently, British tank crews received sixpence a day extra danger money due to the threat of arbitrary execution. Flame tanks also suffered from the fact, along with flamethrower-armed troops, that all enemy within range would usually open up on them due to the fear of the weapon. Flame tanks were not necessarily more prone to catching fire. Tanks such as the Churchill Crocodile, which towed the liquid container behind the actual tank, held no greater risk of fire than standard tanks. World War II Axis German Army Flamethrower-A field variant of the German Panzer I used briefly during the war in North Africa. Panzer II Flam, a variant of the German Panzer II, a USFD-E. Flam Panzer 38, a variant of the Jagd Panzer 38 tank destroyer. Panzerkampfwagen B2, a variant produced by the Germans based on captured French Char B1 tank chassis. Flam Panzer III, a USF-M Panzer III, a variant of the German Panzer III, a USF-M SDKF Z251 16th Flam Panzerwagen, a variant based on the SDKF Z251 series of half-tracks. Stug 3, a variant based on a variety of pre-USFF Stug 3 assault gun chassis. Italian Royal Army L3LF Flame Tank, a variant of the L3 35th Stankit. L6LF Flame Tank, a variant of the L6 40th Light Tank. Imperial Japanese Army Type SS Armored Engineer Vehicle Models Boko Otsu Hei TEI. Flame Tank Model of Type 95 Hargo Tank. World War II Allied Light Tank M3 Satan improvised conversion of M3 light tank with Canadian Ronson. Medium tank M4A3R3 Zippo, Sherman tank used during the Battle of Iwo Jima. M4 Crocodile, 4 M4 tanks converted by British for U.S. 2nd Armored Division in NW Europe with the same armored fuel trailer as used on Churchill, but the fuel line went over the hull. Sherman Badger, Canada's replacement of its Ram Badger. The Sherman Badger was a turretless M4A2 HVSS Sherman with WASP-IC flamethrower in place of hull machine gun, developed sometime from 1945 to 1949. The 150 gallons at 250 psi was effective to 125 yards, with elevation of +30 to -10 degrees and traverse of 30 degrees left and 23 degrees right. This inspired the usd 68 Sherman Adder, a conversion kit to equip Sherman tanks, used in India on Sherman 3 and Sherman V tank. Infantry, MKIV, Churchill Oak, Churchill Mk2 with fixed Ronson flamethrower. 3 were part of the 1942 raid on Jet but were put out of action before the equipment was used. Churchill Crocodile, Churchill Mk7 equipped with a kit including an armored fuel trailer that used compressed nitrogen for pressure. The flamethrower replaced the hull machine gun, leaving the main armament unaffected. 800 conversion kits were produced, operating under the organization of the 79th Armored Division. As with other specialized vehicles, it was deployed following the 1944 Normandy landings in northwest Europe and in the Italian campaign. It could deliver 81-second bursts out to 120 yards before refueling. Tank infantry Mk2 Matilda II Matilda Frog 25 Matilda II tanks converted to flame tanks by the Australians in late 1944. Matilda Murray, Australian improvement over the Frog, produced in 1945. Medium tank T-34-34, created from various models of the T-34-76, had an internally mounted flamethrower AT-041 replacing the hull machine gun. OT-34-85, created from the T-34-85, had an internally mounted flamethrower AT-042 replacing the hull machine gun. Heavy breakthrough tank KV-KV-8, KV-1 fitted with the AT-041 flamethrower in the turret, beside a machine gun. In order to accommodate the new weapon, the 76.2 mm gun was replaced with a smaller 45 mm gun M1932, though it was disguised to look like the standard 76 mm. Light tank T-26 KHT-26, developed in 1933. Based on the twin-turreted T-26 Mod. 1931 tank but using a single turret armed with a flamethrower, the second turret was removed. KHT-130, flamethrower variant of model 1933, using a larger 45 mm gun turret. KHT-133, flamethrower variant of model 1939. KHT-134, flamethrower variant of model 1939, with 45 mm gun. Other Ram Badger P Canadian Ram Cruiser tank adapted with flamethrower. LVT-4 Ronson, with full tracks, some armor, and a turret. Arguably the landing vehicle tracked was a swimming light tank. This was a fire support version with an 8-howitzer motor carriage turret, but the 75 mm howitzer replaced with the Canadian Ronson flamethrower. LVT-4 Sea Serpent, British version armed with flamethrowers, but unarmored. Wasp, not strictly a flame tank. The Universal Carrier fitted with the Wasp flamethrower, a continued development of the Ronson by the Petroleum Warfare Department. Post-war and Cold War tanks. M67 Zippo, a variant of the US M48 Patton tank. T-55, a variant of the widely used Soviet T-55 tank. T-62, a variant of the Soviet T-62 MBT. M132 armored flamethrower, not actually based on a tank, but an armored flamethrower based on the M113 armored personnel carrier.